Months ago, I was working in the garden, the Food and Faith garden, with Ron. That's a dangerous combination. And he asked me the question, you've led adult education classes before, what would you like to lead next year? So notice how he framed the question. It wasn't, would you like to teach another class? It's what will you teach next? Kind of thing. And so, of course, I was completely caught off guard. And as I usually do, shut my mouth off before I thought much about it. And I said, sure, of course I'd be teaching our class. And he goes, well, what would the topic be? And now I really felt trapped. And so I sort of pretended I didn't really hear him. But of course, that didn't work for very long. And I was thinking about it. I said, I've always wanted to sort of, try to get inside people's heads to try to figure out, what sort of makes them happy. I think I understand what makes me happy, but I'd like to sort of understand what makes other people happy. So I only have 8 slides in my presentation. So this is the primer, the advertisement, if you will. So, and I'll read it for you because I know the print's small. So in today's world, we are pulled in many different directions. Our jobs, our families, our friends, our thoughts, our faith, all of these compete for our time and energy. Where, in striving to meet the demands of each of these obligations put upon us, lies happiness. What does happiness even look or feel like? Is happiness merely transitory? Or can we achieve true long-term happiness? Can we have it within our power to actually be happy? Or is our happiness mostly the result of fortunate external circumstances? And what role does faith play in helping us gain happiness? So, is there anyone who has not yet been to worship today? Okay, I've seen a couple. Well, so I found some of the commentary today, particularly aspects of the sermon, and one of the scripture readings, which I'll come back to at the very end, particularly interesting when it speaks to happiness. Okay, so does everybody have their pencil and a piece of paper? Yeah. Okay. So, as any good educator, I want you to engage in exercise. This is a timer. You have 30 seconds. What would life be without a little pressure? Okay? And in large part, I'm going to pose a question to you. And the purpose of actually having such a short time to answer the question is that I want it to be off the cuff. This is not a time for deep thought. That will occur hopefully after the class. Okay? Write down 3 things that make you happy. There'll be 4 of these questions, so don't use up all your paper at one shot. Wow, it didn't take you long. Are you done? Wow. You're an overachiever. We're not going to collect these. I'm not going to collect them. Yeah, this is all take-home kind of thing. Okay. So the second question I want to pose to you is, does context matter? Context matter. So if you're coming in late, there's a piece of paper there, and grab a pencil. The first question I ask people is, list 3 things that make you happy. And so for here, how might you define the context of happiness within your family? So now with this sort of family umbrella, again, maybe you captured these as part of the first thing, if so, great. But now I'm trying to plant a seed in your mind that within this context of family, how do you define happiness? Yes, you also have 30 seconds to answer this one too.
That's all you get is 30 seconds?
Yep, sorry.
It's Not deep thinking, it's off the top of the head. Brain.
Okay, so my question to you now is, having answered originally 3 things that make you happy, and now I've tried to plant a seed in your mind of this context of family, and asked you this, basically the same question again, but now in the context of family. If you compare and contrast the 2 lists, are they the same? Are they different? And so,
a verb versus a noun. A verb versus a noun.
There could be tons of explanation, dozens, maybe thousands of explanations. And so, in large part, the exercise is really just designed to actually prompt you to think about, when you think of happiness, how does context influence what makes you happy? And it's really kind of that simple. And it is significant. It is very significant. So in essence, did your list change? And if so, how and why? So what might one of the benefits be of actually trying to analyze, what the makeup of either one of these lists, or to draw some conclusion if there is one, by making that comparison? Can you think of any?
Well, if you're happy within your home, with your family, as you reach out into your surroundings from your home, it gives you more energy to be happy and find good things as you're out in your world.
I think that's an excellent observation.
It's sort of feel good and do good. Feel good versus
Yeah. And as Bart mentioned, one is sort of me, and one is sort of maybe us.
Right.
Maybe sort of a smaller us. You were going to say something.
I was just going to say the first thing that I put on the beginning of my list was being at peace with my family.
Was that your first list?
My first list.
Yeah.
And it occurs to me that not much else makes me happy if that first one isn't true.
Yeah, so that's another point I was hoping would come up. So how many times have we heard that, that some of our strife or life strife is actually rooted in sort of, uncomfortable home life for whatever reason. And so if we can't be happy at home, where can we be happy? Okay, so now I want you to think about, again, a different type of context. This sort of comes back a little bit about, the one that Bart mentioned, is whose happiness are we talking about? So how might society, so now you have to sort of extrapolate, put yourself in, as a member of society. How does society define happiness?
Our money.
Yeah.
This is free. Cars. I'm sorry.
No, it's the things.
Yeah.
That was said in the sermon, with more things in your, everything around you, your car, what kind of car.
Speaking of cars, every time a holiday comes along and the ads go towards giving somebody a car
Yes.
for Christmas, I think, holy cow, you guys know nothing about Christmas. I mean, it's just...
well, society
Has
doesn't
made us that
know a
way.
whole
Yeah.
lot.
But at the same point in time, I've participated with people who live without a car,
Yeah.
and actually, as a consequence, can't get to work, can't get to doctor's
That's
appointments.
different, but
And
cars,
so, it ends up sort of being a different thing than sort of a luxury, if you will.
Yeah,
Cars.
It just means you need to have a Maserati or, you know,
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A car.
As I was working on this a couple days ago, I was actually filling out my driver's license plate renewals, and I'm sitting there going, why is it that I have all these cars?
This is interesting topic, society, depends on your society, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the US, I wrote down achievement, I think, because that
Yes.
encapsulates a lot of this, right? And all these things demonstrate what you've achieved, you know, a new car, a bigger house, and, you know, at least from a material standpoint. I worked in Slovenia one year, this was 25 years ago. And I'd say in that society, at least when they, shortly after they came out of communism, achievement wasn't a measure of happiness.
Yeah.
In fact, I just fall back on this, the older generation there couldn't deal with choices. They didn't like going to a grocery store and seeing 4 different types of flour. I wanted a bag that said flour. Now I've got to decide on which flour is best.
Yeah.
You know, and so depending upon your society.
Yeah. You can quickly run into the kid in the candy store problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I now have 10,000 choices.
Yeah. That just
So is
creates
choice
stress.
really good?
Too much of them.
Yeah. But the other one that you bring up is sort of our personal status or our personal achievement. And to some degree, this is weaved or thought to weave, into some of our passions for so-called passions for things, because to some degree they are linked. But at the same point in time, who isn't, who doesn't feel good about reaching some sort of personal achievement, a goal, for, like, for example, one's career, or something like that.
But how does you have to be happy? And it may be, like you say, it may not be a car, it may not, but it may be your career. But that happiness comes from within because you made that happen. It's all personal.
Yeah.
Happiness is personal.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I didn't fill out your lists.
Right.
I'm not here to tell you what to make
Yeah.
is going to make you happy, because I have no clue.
Well, this doesn't imply that you have to be in sync with society. How society...
Don't read ahead.
Society defines happiness, I think, by follow the money.
Yeah.
Follow the money.
So again, you're like one slide ahead of me. But yeah, go ahead.
Sometimes pay attention to these people who buy lottery tickets and somebody always wins. And when they ask them what they're going to do with all that money, it's things like, I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to buy my parents a house, I'm going to get this certain car. And those are kind of the top 2 or 3 things that are on there. And later on, I think there's been some books written about what happens to some of these people after winning this money.
Yeah, a lot of them go bankrupt, I think.
Yeah, friends come out of the woodwork to invest in their business or whatnot, and pretty soon a lot of them are bankrupt in a few years.
Yeah.
I always figured if I ever won, if I ever played, I would divvy up among my family. Let them each have some of it.
Well, but then they fight over how much they got.
I'm in charge of that.
Well, that's after you tithe to the church.
Of course, yes.
Of course.
Also,
Fourth exercise. So now in a different context. And again, maybe you've been sort of having this Christian hat on all along. If so, that's fantastic. But now, again, just trying to, bring it forth, into your brain. As a Christian, how do you define happiness? Okay, so, you know, again, trying to get each of us to sort of walk through an exercise of sort of layers, maybe layers of an onion. Maybe it's all one layer for you, and you know that's great. You know, but otherwise, you know, to trying to sort of get at, you know, sort of where does our faith, you know, come into play in shaping what makes us happy. And you know, is it the first thing that we think about? Is it the second thing? Is it interweaved throughout? And ultimately, you know, to come back to Marge's point, who is it or what is it that influences our choices? Do they come from Scripture? Do they come from Sunday morning? Maybe a Sunday education class? Or are they shaped by commercials on TV? Billboards that tell us that we must have a double cheeseburger, you know, kind of thing. I love double cheeseburgers. But I don't know that they necessarily make me happy. And part of that, again, part of the exercise is to really get one to think about, you know, sort of the difference between immediate gratification and actual true happiness. And how do we spend any time actually trying to separate those things? Or do we just simply move from one instance of immediate gratification to the next, to the next, to the next? So this pops into my head, you know, when I, you know, experience something that I think is negative, broadly defined. And what runs in my mind is that I don't know how those people get up in the morning and look at themselves in the mirror and actually feel good. I don't know how that's possible.
Those people.
Whoever's, you know, again, it could be, again, broadly, I'm trying not to actually define it for you. But, you know, it can be individuals, it can be groups of people. I don't know how they get up, look at themselves in the mirror, and feel good. And I think part of it is that they don't spend any time thinking about exactly these kinds of things. What truly makes them happy? And are they simply moving from one form of immediate gratification to the next? Again, there could be other explanations. I don't want to make it sound like I've got this cornered. What do you think?
I think you're right. I think people that I find have done something, or I've seen it in the news, or I've seen it in activities, sports, wherever. You wonder when they get up in the morning and move on, like, how can you really face this? I don't think they do. I think they just move on, and it just perpetuates without that reflection and that time. Even, you know, there's a daily time for reflection and prayer or whatever that is.
There should be.
And if that's not part of it, they're not looking within to see how to look out.
Yeah, and quite honestly, if there was one walk-away message for today,
could be me too.
Yeah, it would really be that. You know, do we take the time ever to actually address questions like this?
To me, that's one of the primary purposes of our daily devotions. Mm-hmm. And so to the extent that it took some of us a long time to figure that out, what you're looking in the mirror at is, what makes me tick? What is it that makes me tick? And then you go back to your exercises, and if you have a scheduled, what makes you tick number one is my daily devotions. When I then take time to try to be aware of analyze what am I going to do about some of the things that are happening in the world, in our lives, in our neighborhoods, in our whatever. And then I'm reflecting on what makes me tick. And to me, everything sort of went right back to number one. But you gotta have that. I didn't always have it. I'm not proud of that, but.
Yeah, and sometimes mine start off with, you know, oh my goodness, you know, boy, yesterday I just like totally screwed up. You know, I did X, Y, and Z all at the same time. And I need to sort of, you know, not only admit my willful behaviors and actions, but, you know, beg for forgiveness, you know, and
Did you go to the 9 o'clock service?
No, I went to the 8 o'clock service.
At the end of the 9 o'clock service, the story that
Joe Hop?
yeah, Terry told, you didn't hear it then,
No.
but most of us did. It was exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Who told it?
Terry. Somebody can tell the story if they want.
And someone really sweared at her at Sam's soccer game in an awful way. And at the end of the game, came and swore at her again.
I mean, over and over and over again.
Yeah. The whole. And then 3 weeks later, she saw him again. He deeply apologized to her for his behavior. 3 weeks later.
Wow.
This was wonderful. But he was doing this in front of the other kids and everything.
Are the parents there?
She was the opposing team.
Yeah.
She was a parent with the other team. So it was
The only parent.
the only parent.
Yeah. For the
Yeah.
team.
So,
But don't you think, like, I'm sure we all know somebody who's never happy.
Yes.
Never. If you said, oh my gosh, the sky is blue and beautiful today, nope, there's clouds.
But that's what makes them happy. The habitual grouser.
Yes.
The habitual grouser.
Right.
A happy person. It's, God, who made this meal? This food is god awful. Where did you buy this?
Right.
Where did this come?
So would people be willing to just like mention, you know, maybe we can start at one side of the room and just mention something that made them happy. You know, again, it could be on any of your lists. But if somebody takes yours, that's okay. You know, we'll just try to identify the unique ones, you know, around the room. Would people be okay with that?
Sure.
So where do you want to start? You want to start over here and move this way, or start here and move that way?
I'll say so.
We'll
Okay.
start with David.
Okay, we'll start with David. Sorry, you're on the spot, Nan.
My greatest happiness comes from when my wife validates my value to her.
Oh, David, that's so nice.
How are we supposed to follow that?
Especially when he's got a hole in his jacket.
Coffee on
No,
the hand,
that's
my
Gary.
wife.
That's really very self-serving, though.
Yeah.
It's not like for her, it's for me.
Yeah. So do you have one? No? Okay.
It seems to me that happiness can vary from people to people.
Sure. Yeah.
And they could be happy this minute and sad the next minute. So it's pretty hard to define happiness because what's happy to me may not be happy to the next person.
Absolutely true. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to capture the group sort of list of happinesses. So what makes you, one thing that makes you happy?
Well, the lack of any problems.
Life without stress is going to make me happy.
And it's hard to define what the problem is because one minute you're happy because there's nothing that aggravates you.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you get a phone call and it doesn't really bother you. It should be your problem.
Yeah.
Because you hear this, you get sad.
Yeah. So how about you?
When I wake up in the morning,
Yeah.
I lay there for thank you.
Yeah, that makes me happy too.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, that's one of my favorites, but but you know, just laughing with my friends and family.
Laughter can be powerful. How about you?
Oh, I've got so many I could take.
Wait, you can only pick one now.
When
the 3 neighbor children next door come running, Elida to come and play with me.
Oh, yeah, it's another type of validation.
Yes.
Yeah. Bill?
Sometimes listening to good music.
Good music. Yeah. Vicki?
Can I just tell a short story?
Okay.
Short. My daughter last night, this made me very happy. My grandson plays basketball, and one of the kids on the team was, he's one of those little troublemakers all the time and everything. And as they were leaving the basketball game, he said, "Oh, Mom, I saw you cheering for this other guy, Mike." And she says, "Yeah, he did so well." And he goes, "You know, Mom, he just needs to be loved." Well, that made me so happy that he recognized it, right? There you go.
Gary?
Well,
And you can't say a jacket without holes.
and pants without coffee. What I'm struggling with is, and I made my list out, but I'm struggling with the actual definition of the feeling of happiness.
He's an engineer.
I'm struggling with that. The feeling of happiness. What is the feeling of happiness? Is it, you get all tingly, or so? A lot of things get me all tingly, some of which I can't mention. But that's what I struggle with. Maybe somebody could help me with that.
Maybe it's those endorphins.
What is the feeling of happiness? What is that?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure I can tell you.
Tell more.
Yeah, I can't tell you, because I can only tell you what brings me joy and makes me happy. And it may overlap with what makes you happy as well, but maybe not. And that's sort of what it was mentioned over there. So let me keep progressing. Go ahead, Barb.
My granddaughter, who's 16, was here yesterday. We did a tour of U of M for going to the Mason Boarding School. Yeah, and it just going over all those memories that I had from being a student at U of M. It was just, it was family, but just interaction was so wonderful.
How about you?
I would say family and watching the little ones growing up and being part of their life.
Yeah. Sonia?
Finding a time in a day when 2 or more people in the family can sit down and say, "What's going on with you?" And finding a way to get out of yourself enough to share, to be
truly
touched by
present.
the other person, to be reassured, to be loved, and and to get things settled. Sometimes life is so busy, we don't know what the other person or persons in the household are rushing around about or worrying about.
Yeah. Ron, you got something?
What makes me happy?
Name one thing that's on your list that makes you happy.
Physical comfort.
What's that?
Physical comfort.
Physical comfort.
Yeah.
I like to be comfortable. How about you, Ruth?
When my family's content, then my heart sings.
Yeah. Awesome.
That was so early.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting concept too, isn't it? So that again, Harry was mentioning that, I'm sure he was joking, but sometimes happiness is the rare events that stand out, and otherwise, stressful sort of, lifestyle. Do you have something else, Harry?
So a good cup of coffee and then
I love you.
milk.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of a half and half guy. So.
I was just escaping.
Just
time for self-meditation.
Yeah.
From it all.
Well, to some degree, the personal escape, again, I love my quiet time too, but sometimes I find personal escape in actually engaging in the conversations, like Sonia mentioned, because that is also a bit of an escape. Marty?
Well, your Christian one caught my attention, and I think it makes me happy when I really feel God's presence beside me or right there.
Yeah.
It's
Comes back
it's
to
a
comfort,
moving, it's a moving.
Validation,
Yes.
The love.
Well, I would have to say the same thing as she did, that when you know that God is there with you all the time, that is just so comforting. That's joyfulness. And then being with my family, that really makes me happy too.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna say those two things, that's how it comes.
Cool. Okay.
Very much the same. I thought of what Sonia was describing in our family. The tradition is called peaks and valleys, developed by my social work daughter, that everyone has to say the peak and the valley is our last bit of time together before we all part, and it's become a wonderful thing.
Yeah, the Boy Scouts, we used to talk of it as thorns and roses.
Yes, exactly.
What do you call it?
Thorns and roses. Every day we would end with, everybody would have to name their thorn and rose of the day, you know, kind of thing. How about you?
Baby snuggles and bedtime stories. So essentially it's connecting with each one of my family members.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm happy at home, in comfort, my quiet time, my action time. I just like being without a schedule,
Yeah.
and sometimes that's a delight.
Yeah.
I even jump up in the morning when I know we don't have anything to do. Sometimes, oh my gosh, so we have face today.
Yeah.
Not anything is great.
That's cool.
I appreciate Mother's Day. I have a pet chicken who's approaching a year old now. He was born last Thanksgiving.
Wow.
And the thing that makes me happy is when he's happy. And every single day when I wake up, I go to the chipmunk house, I go and I check on him. Every day he wakes up and he goes to almost a whole cup of almonds. And he's more wild than any chipmunk that I've ever seen before. But he is at the top of his, he's in love, so I'm happy with that.
So Mike and Debbie, you got what makes you happy?
Family.
Family?
Yeah, so especially watching our grandkids play. Just watching them play, especially when they're playing without fighting.
Yeah. And so I have a short video. I forget how long it runs. I think it's like 6 minutes or something like that. It's pretty short. And I spent 20 minutes this morning trying to figure out how to get the TV to work, only to discover that the remote did not have a battery.
That's the first thing you're supposed to check.
And so I was fired from the IT team.
That made you happy when you
What keeps us healthy and happy as we go through life? If you were going to invest now in your future best self, where would you put your time and your energy? There was a recent survey of millennials asking them what their most important life goals were, and over 80% said that a major life goal for them was to get rich. And another 50% of those same young adults said that another major life goal was to become famous. And we're constantly told to lean into work, to push harder and achieve more. We're given the impression that these are the things that we need to go after in order to have a good life. Pictures of entire lives, of the choices that people make and how those choices work out for them, those pictures are almost impossible to get. Most of what we know about human life, we know from asking people to remember the past. And as we know, hindsight is anything but 20/20. We forget vast amounts of what happens to us in life, and sometimes memory is downright creative. But what if we could watch entire lives as they unfold through time? What if we could study people from the time that they were teenagers all the way into old age to see what really keeps people happy and healthy? We did that. The Harvard study of adult development may be the longest study of adult life that's ever been done. For 75 years, we've tracked the lives of 724 men. Year after year, asking about their work, their home lives, their health, And of course, asking all along the way without knowing how their life stories were going to turn out. Studies like this are exceedingly rare. Almost all projects of this kind fall apart within a decade because too many people drop out of the study, or funding for the research dries up, or the researchers get distracted, or they die, and nobody moves the ball further down the field. But through a combination of luck and the persistence of several generations of researchers, this study has survived. About 60 of our original 724 men are still alive, still participating in the study, most of them in their 90s. And we are now beginning to study the more than 2,000 children of these men. And I'm the 4th director of the study. Since 1938, we've tracked the lives of 2 groups of men. The first group started in the study when they were sophomores at Harvard College. They all finished college during World War II, and then most went off to serve in the war. And the second group that we followed was a group of boys from Boston's poorest neighborhoods. Boys who were chosen for the study specifically because they were from some of the most troubled and disadvantaged families in the Boston of the 1930s. Most lived in tenements, many without hot and cold running water. When they entered the study, all of these teenagers were interviewed, they were given medical exams. We went to their homes and we interviewed their parents. And then these teenagers grew up into adults who entered all walks of life. They became factory workers and lawyers and bricklayers and doctors. One president of the United States. Some developed alcoholism. A few developed schizophrenia. Some climbed the social ladder from the bottom all the way to the very top. And some made that journey in the opposite direction. The founders of this study would never in their wildest dreams have imagined that I would be standing here today, 75 years later, telling you that the study still continues. Every 2 years, our patient and dedicated research staff calls up our men and asks them if we can send them yet one more set of questions about their lives. Many of the inner city Boston men ask us, why do you keep wanting to study me? My life just isn't that interesting. The Harvard men never ask that question. To get the clearest picture of these lives, we don't just send them questionnaires. We interview them in their living rooms. We get their medical records from their doctors. We draw their blood. We scan their brains. We talk to their children. We videotape them talking with their wives about their deepest concerns. And when, about a decade ago, we finally asked the wives if they would join us as members of the study, many of the women said, you know, it's about time. So what have we learned? What are the lessons that come from the tens of thousands of pages of information that we've generated on these lives? Well, the lessons aren't about wealth or fame or working harder and harder. The clearest message that we get from this 75-year study is this: good relationships keep us happier and healthier, period. We've learned 3 big lessons about relationships. The first is that social connections are really good for us, and when loneliness kills, it turns out that people who are more socially connected to family, to friends, to community, are happier, they're physically healthier, and they live longer than people who are less well connected. And the experience of loneliness turns out to be toxic. People who are more isolated than they want to be from others find that they are less happy, their health declines earlier in midlife, their brain functioning declines sooner, and they live shorter lives than people who are not lonely. And the sad fact is that at any given time, more than 1 in 5 Americans will report that they're lonely. And we know that you can be lonely in a crowd and you can be lonely in a marriage. So the second big lesson that we learned is that it's not just the number of friends you have, and it's not whether or not you're in a committed relationship, but it's the quality of your close relationships that matters. It turns out that living in the midst of conflict is really bad for our health. High conflict marriages, for example, without much affection, turn out to be very bad for our health, perhaps worse than getting divorced. And living in the midst of good, warm relationships is protective. Once we had followed our men all the way into their 80s, we wanted to look back at them at midlife and to see if we could predict who was going to grow into a happy, healthy octogenarian and who wasn't. And when we gathered together everything we knew about them at age 50, it wasn't their middle-aged cholesterol levels that predicted how they were going to grow old. It was how satisfied they were in their relationships. The people who were the most satisfied in their relationships at age 50 were the healthiest at age 80. And good, close relationships seem to buffer us from some of the slings and arrows of getting old. Our most happily partnered men and women reported in their 80s that on the days when they had more physical pain, their moods stayed just as happy. But the people who were in unhappy relationships, on the days when they reported more physical pain, it was magnified by more emotional pain. And the third big lesson that we learn about relationships and our health is that good relationships don't just protect our bodies, they protect our brains. It turns out that being in a securely attached relationship to another person in your 80s is protective. That the people who are in relationships where they really feel they can count on the other person in times of need, those people's memories stay sharper longer. And the people in relationships where they feel they really can't count on the other one, those are the people who experience earlier memory decline. And those good relationships, they don't have to be smooth all the time. Some of our octogenarian couples could bicker with each other day in and day out. But as long as they felt that they could really count on the other when the going got tough, those arguments didn't take a toll on their memories. So, this message that good, close relationships are good for our health and well-being, this is wisdom that's as old as the hills. Why is this so hard to get and so easy to ignore? Well, we're human. What we really like is a quick fix, something we can get that'll make our lives good and keep them that way. Relationships are messy and they're complicated, and the hard work of tending to family and friends, it's not sexy or glamorous. It's also lifelong. It never ends. The people in our 75-year study who were the happiest in retirement were the people who had actively worked to replace workmates with new playmates. Just like the millennials in that recent survey, many of our men, when they were starting out as young adults, really believed that fame and wealth and high achievement were what they needed to go after to have a good life. But over and over these 75 years, our study has shown that the people who fared the best were the people who leaned into relationships with family, with friends, with community. So what about you? Let's say you're 25, or you're 40, or you're 60. What might leaning into relationships even look like? Well, the possibilities are practically endless. It might be something as simple as replacing screen time with people time, or livening up a stale relationship by doing something new together, long walks or date nights, or reaching out to that family member who you haven't spoken to in years, because those all too common family feuds take a terrible toll on the people who hold the grudges. I'd like to close with a quote from Mark Twain. More than a century ago, he was looking back on his life, and he wrote this: "There isn't time So brief is life, for bickerings, apologies, heartburnings, callings to account. There is only time for loving, and but an instant, so to speak, for that. The good life is built with good relationships. Thank you.
So one of the scripture readings from today was from Colossians. Again, Pastor Jim and I did not plan this. So, again, and this is from the contemporary English Bible, I think. His glorious power will make you patient and strong enough to endure anything, and you will be truly happy. And so, again, I just want to wrap up because I know people have to take off. But what I was hoping to do today is really just to get you to think. That's always my goal as an educator, to get participants to truly think and ask the question, what really makes you truly happy? And if you're not pursuing these conversations, what is it that's really holding you back from doing it? What are you afraid of to actually, engage in these conversations? And, and it's not like you necessarily need to go out and buy the BMW or, in order to make you happy. You don't have to take these, you don't have to leap across the Grand Canyon, but rather, as you've heard from the TED Talk, these people were taking baby steps all throughout their lives, but yet focusing on, really what makes them truly happy. And it's, the buildup of those really tiny steps that accumulate across time that allow us to actually, grow as people, grow as human beings, as, the personal comforter to, other people. And I think actually is part of our charge as Christians and help us to love our neighbor. And so, I would encourage you, if you don't build this in as part of your, daily practice, is actually to ponder these kinds of things and ask what truly makes you happy. So thanks for coming today, and I hope you enjoyed it. Good job.